Record. And we're going live. Handing over to Naomi.
Hello, everybody. It's I hope you had a good night's rest and are excited by the prospect of a whole plethora of moths of all shapes and sizes, as well as a whole load of presenters of all shapes and sizes about more than moths, about the way moths are connected to our ecosystem, part of our environment, affected by climate change, relating to energy systems, and how we're all behaving and hoping for a better future, and acting and behaving differently, maybe as a result of seeing all these wonderful moths. And of course, we will, the Moths who are collecting their moths are also going to be recording those and sending that set of information off to butterfly conservation, who will then manage that information and encourage our environment to be looked after in different ways, so that those moth species will increase, be more comfortable in their habitat. So I think we should quickly say hello to all our presenters, because you met them, some of them last night. We've got a new person here as well, but it's good to be reminded of everybody. So obviously there's me and Jenny and Chloe. Hello, Chloe.
Hello, nice to see you. Hello, hello.
Yeah, and then there is Jacqui Stubbings in Cheltenham.
Hello.
Hello, Jacqui, and I see you've got your kids there, and there's a white ermine.
We do. We have a white ermine. Say hello. Hello.
It's beautiful. White ermines are one of my favourite moths.
I know.
Well, I hope somebody might have caught one. I don't know whether it's within the season. We'll see. Cross fingers. And we've got Tess Walsh, who's going to be starring in a new video today. It's nice to see you, Tess. Thanks for getting up. That's lovely. And we've got George Tordoff from Butterfly Conservation in South Wales.
Good morning.
Hi, George. And I know you found some moths in your garden last night.
I have some moths to show you later, yes, so that's good.
Brilliant. And then there's Sonya Bedford from Green Wedmore, and you're going to tell us a little bit about your food forest this morning, Sonya.
Morning, lovely to be here.
Yeah, nice to see you. And John Walters from Devon, and he got up at 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Are you feeling a bit recovered today, John?
Oh, fine now, yeah.
Yeah. 4 o'clock in the morning in order to make a little film for us about the finds that he found yesterday. And, Jenny, help me. Who else is on the list? Because what I'm seeing, I don't know whether I've forgotten anybody.
Simon. Carrie as well.
Oh, Simon, yes.
Simon and Carrie.
Simon, hello, Simon, down in the Exeter orchards, orchards by the X. Hello, and I'm glad your moth trap didn't disappear overnight.
Oh my. Yeah, good morning, everybody. And I've got a white ermine. It's a real one, but maybe not quite as spectacular as the one we just saw.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And then we've got Carrie from Trinity, teaches in Trinity School in Exeter, Trinity Primary, and she has just been working with us last week there, I think. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that experience. Hello, Carrie.
Good morning, everybody. Yep, I'm excited to share what we've been up to.
Yeah, thank you. So that, I think, is our list of all our presenters, which is brilliant. And now I think we should directly go over to Simon, who's in the orchards by the X, and he'll show us a bit about what he's found, some examples. Yeah.
Great. Morning, everybody. And yeah, I'm relieved the trap stayed where it was. Let me just do zoom out, show you my position again. So hang on a second, let's just do that. So yeah, I'm in an orchard, newly created orchard on the banks of the River Exe. and I was showing people a nice sculpture that we'd done, James Bond had done. So there's a nice bit of hedgerow here, and I just popped the trap underneath this damson here. I've got my keep net because I'm hoping to keep some back for later on. We have a picnic here at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to show the punters. Right, now let's see what we've got. So ermines, yeah. There we go. I've got a couple of white ermines, really nicely named, isn't it? After the ermine that the royalty wore in days gone by. And there's another one down there.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
just about see him. He's lovely.
Is that any better?
Yeah. Yeah,
Good.
great.
Off. And there is also in here a buff ermine. So there are two types of common ermine, and they're quite tricky actually, but the distinguishing feature is this one is the buff ermine, and it's got the black, it's got fewer black spots basically, and this is not a very well marked specimen, but the black dots sort of form a V shape over the back of its wings. You can just about see that, but that's a rather cool moth. I'll tell you what I have got, and I shall try and bring it out later, but I'm sure other people have got hawk moths perhaps. But there we go. I've got a poplar hawk moth there.
Aren't they amazing, Simon, the way they sort of sit with their wings up, their forewings slightly at a V like that?
It is, isn't it? And incredibly camouflaged. I mean, you just never see these things during the day, and this is sort of the magic of running a trap, really. Let's see if I can show you the snout that I caught as well, which is a common moth, and a lot of the moths in my trap are reliant on nettles, and this is one of them. It's in this pot because it got rather active when I tried to take it out. I will try and take it out of the pot in a minute, because I don't know whether you can see, it's very appropriately named. It's got a nose. I don't know if you can see that at the front.
Is that like a sort of proboscis, like you get on some beetles, or is it it's just got a funny shape?
Yeah, I think it's it's called palps. Maybe John can explain a little bit more about that, because but they are, yeah, I won't attempt it. I'm sure John can explain what they are.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Got a rather nice sort of Concord shape. It's a brown moth, but it's quite exciting the way that it's got this nose at the front. What else was I going to show you? I've got some quite small but very, very beautiful moths here. These are the minor moths, and they're really quite tricky. In fact, you can only really tell these apart by looking at the genitalia, the male, sexual parts of the moth. But that one's rather beautifully marked. I'm pretty sure it's something called the marbled minor. But if I can get the other one out for comparison, this is a bit tricky. But you see, if I can put them alongside each other, I don't know whether you can see that. That's also, I think, a marbled minor, and it looks quite different.
Yeah, one is sort of black and white and grey, and the other one's a little bit more brown, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But they've both got this, there's a rather nice bar, a dark bar, I don't know if you can see that, like an antler on the wing. What else? I'm pretty sure this is, I'm a bit rusty on these, I must admit, but maybe John can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that is a Hebrew character. I think that's a triple spotted clay, but they may correct me because I am a little bit rusty.
Well, it's very nice. I enjoyed seeing that one.
Yeah, there's a nice small white wave there. That's a very common moth.
Where does that one live? Do you know, Simon? Is that reliant on nettles and hedges and things?
Yeah, most of these they're just, you know, you can see the foliage here. We've got lots of nettles and lots of grasses. It's been cut now, but a lot of these smaller moths feed on those sort of common grasses, cocksfoot, nettles, but a lot of them also are feeding on, some of the larger ones are feeding on willows and hazel and shrubs.
Yeah.
Maybe that's enough from me at the moment. And
What about that poem you had last night that you were wondering about? Have you still got that?
I was afraid you might ask me about that because it was in my flow booklet, which I've just left.
Oh well. Well, can you at some point put it on social media or email us or something, and we'll share it. That would be lovely. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks very much, Simon. That was a lovely haul of interesting moths, and all because I would say the variety you're getting there must have improved since there's more vegetation and that hedge and trees as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You've just reminded me, actually, there was one that I meant to show. Hang on a second. I think generally you're right. Obviously, the orchard planting has improved things. But this is something that might not be in other traps. And I'm pretty sure this is an apple ermine. So it's another, this is actually a micro moth. And there's quite a few of these little ermines that are quite difficult to tell apart. But I'm pretty sure that's an apple ermine. And as the name suggests, so these basically feed as larvae inside the leaf, and they mine out the leaf, eating it, pupate and then develop into the adult here. So that's an apple ermine. Great.
That's great. And John says that the Hebrew character that you showed us was a cetaceous Hebrew character.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, good
Great.
stuff.
Thank you. All right, then we might see you later, Simon. And now we're going off up to Somerset in a way. We're going to just show a few pictures of the community food forest that's been planted up there, and Sonya will just tell us one or two things about it as we go. Jenny's just bringing up the pictures now, hopefully, and
Great, thanks, Jenny.
Yeah. So
do you want me to just tell a little bit about our food forest? So Wedmore, Green Wedmore Group have already got a community woodland which was planted 12 years ago in a community orchard, and last year an area, we've got a car park in the village, obviously for our visitors to come and see the solar, but there's an area next to the car park in the village. It's about I'd say 2 acres maybe, and it's next to the sewage treatment plant for the village, and is owned by the parish council and has been redundant for many years. It's very overgrown with, or was very overgrown with nettles, and we, Green Wedmore, approached the parish council and said we'd very much like for the area to become a food forest, and so these pictures are showing us last year starting the build of that, or planting of that food forest. You can see it's right centrally in the village, with gooseberries, elder, blackberries, hazel, and I'm trying to think, red currants, native hedge, and we planted all of those in November last year, lots and lots, which has been fantastic, and they're all growing super well. The site does have is overrun with nettles, which I was really good to hear you say about that being. I'm not a moth expert, I just like looking at them, and it was good to hear you say about the nettles, because we've had a bit of a battle with the nettles, because we want to make it, although it's done on permaculture principles, we do have paths running around it and want to make it accessible to everybody, because it is century in the village. And so far it's been absolutely brilliant. We've had lots of visitors. We've met lots of new people who've come to the village for traveling through, or just coming down and having a peaceful moment down there and wanting to find out a little bit more about what we do. And people that weren't really interested in plants, food forests, or moths or insects or bees have now come along and take part. So there's a wonderful band of volunteers who we all go down there and look after it. It forms now part of our trio of areas that we can continue to increase the biodiversity in the area. And it's also kick-started our Wedmore Wildlife Project. So we're planning on doing a lot more with people in their gardens, and we're producing maps of the village and wildlife corridors and insect corridors, so that people can cultivate plants and really connect back all of the areas in the village that have been lost over the years, and some of those through flooding and through erosion. So it's really, really exciting, and has been even more than we hoped, I think, the food forest. And we really look forward to watching it grow over the years. It's been, so nice just planting something, because and then comparing it to the woodland, and seeing how much things have grown. And we do trapping down at the community woodland, and Vanessa has done a lot with the moths and the insects in all of our community and wildlife areas. So I think that's probably all on that, if that's okay.
That's brilliant. And that was timed so perfectly for the range of photos. But I hope everybody got I'm sure they did get the gist of the place with the photos and with your information, Sonya. So thank you for that. And
thank you.
We might pop back later in the year, if you don't mind, and see how it's getting on, and perhaps find some.
Oh, please do. Yeah, and we'll show you some moths then, because obviously Wedmore's got some spectacular moths.
Yeah, of course. Great, thank you. Thanks. And from Somerset, we come back to Exeter, and we are going to see Chloe and what she's found in her moth trap, because we have these moth traps that we're lending out to schools, and in between that we can borrow them and put them in our gardens, can't we, Chloe?
We have certainly borrowed some, and last night I am really pleased to say that I had 14 heart and darts. So many heart and dart moths in my trap. I wonder if anyone else had the same thing. But these are the ones that I found that I didn't really know what they were. So I thought I would just do a little spot the moth challenge for our mothers. Can anyone tell me what this one on the top left is called?
It looks like a lichness or a moth.
Okay, lovely.
And there's another one that looks similar to that. I don't know its name at the moment. I'll look it up.
Can anyone see any others that are jumping out? What?
There's a bright line brown eye down the bottom, in the middle, a willow beauty to the left of that, an uncertain moth to the right. That looks like a Brussels lace on the right at the top. I'm not sure what the one in the middle is. It's a brown moth. It's quite tricky for that.
Oh, it's lovely to hear an expert say that. A brown moth.
It's a brown moth.
We say to each other very often. That one on the right there, that Brussels lace. I love moths names. I know we've been hearing all sorts of other beautiful names, but
I think my favourite in that set though was the uncertain moth, because I feel that I'm looking at moths most of the time. They're just magnificent, but I'm a bit uncertain. So that was a very, very enjoyable thing this morning to discover with my boys. The cats also were very keen to check them out too, but fortunately I managed to stop them eating any of them. So that came at the end of a lovely mothy week with Trinity Primary School. And I wonder, Naomi, are we going to go and speak to Carrie too?
Yeah, I think so, Carrie. Hello, Carrie.
So, Carrie, you're the forest school lead at Trinity Primary School, so you were already really interested in bees. Can you tell us about the school's engagement with moths this week?
Yes, well, we had some small groups go into our DT room, and Chloe amazingly provided on Monday an actual author, the author of The Moth's Whisper.
The ballet, yes.
So the children could see from the start of her process to writing the book. So she brought in her rough draft copies, which were handwritten, you know, like homemade books, like that kids naturally do anyway. And then she showed the next process where she typed up and made amendments by her handwriting all over it. And then the final process. And the children were just amazed that an actual adult, an actual author still did this. They just assumed books just happen and people just produce them. They didn't quite get that an adult has to go through so much process. And it was really nice because she brought in her illustrations, which were phenomenal, and to see real life paintings, and for the children to be able to touch them. She was very forgiving with their grubby little hands, wanting to touch them and like pass them around. But it really infused their enthusiasm. They were going away saying, I want to be an author. We spoke about this project and how important this project is. And nearly every child within that session was going home, I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my mummy to download the Quiver app. I'm going to tell my mummy to go onto the website because I want to make the moths and we want to support, because we're really lucky in Trinity. It's a small school because we're growing. And I have a big influence. They feed off my enthusiasm for things, and I get quite enthusiastic very quickly about new things and new projects. And this has become a new project that I absolutely love. And as the process was going, we've got this new thing now. I love butterflies and bees. I'm a beekeeper too. And I talk about them being pollinators all the time. But since meeting Chloe and Miranda and the lovely Ellie, I've learned that moths are also pollinators. So now me and the children talk about the daytime pollinators, which is the bees and the butterflies, and then they pass the night shift onto the moths to do the pollinating. And it is getting into the children's brains that moths are really important. And then we also had, at the end of the week, the amazing Ellie, the artist, who came and taught the children art techniques, which the children thrived. And some of our tricky children actually exceeded themselves. I was a bit concerned, like, will they be able to have the attention? But they were the best. They were really into the detail of the moths. The drawings that were produced were phenomenal, weren't they, Chloe?
I was really impressed. There were some children who just drew moth after moth after moth, and as soon as they realised that they could do the observational drawing, there was one particular boy, I think he was Sam. I don't think that he had known that he could draw, and just the joy in his face when he realised that he could draw what he saw was quite impressive, wasn't it?
It was, and it just fills your heart with joy to just see these little creatures just blossom and just take a new interest. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's great, Carrie. And so, do you know where you're going to take it next? The whole project.
Well, because currently this week we haven't been able to make the moths to go to the COP 26. So next week, each class is going to be making the moths to send up with lovely Chloe. And then from here, I want to raise money. I want to buy my own moth trap because I really want to embed this in my forest school journey. Like, I have the beehive and I teach the children about the bees, and moths are now my next thing because they're fascinating in so many ways. For the children to describe the texture, the patterns. I mean, it fits so many parts of the curriculum. So Mr. Wilder, the headmaster, better watch out. I'm going to be after his pennies.
Yeah, that sounds great. And next month we'll either have more children appearing, or we will show you some of the photographs of all these children working hard in the schools, because in Plymouth we've gone into about 20 schools and delivered the moth traps, and those schools are making moths and joining in with the whole project. And in Exeter we're hoping to go into about 10 schools, but then we have all these others that are popping up and want to do it. So like Jacqui, and in Cheltenham, she's been going into a school there, and so it's great. We're reaching loads of children. So thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Chloe, for that. And now we're going to see Tess, and Tess last night gave us an overview of her perspective of COP26 and what she hoped for in the future. And this morning, we thought that it would be a good opportunity to see a little video that we've made with her about climate change, which we did for a conference last week, which was the STEM conference, the science, technology. What does the E stand for, Chloe? Science, technology,
Engineering
and maths. Yeah, and so we made this film for them for classes of youngsters, and now we're going to show it to you. But hello, Tess.
Hi everyone, I'm Tess. I'm 15 years old and I deeply care about Mother Nature and the world around me. From the rush of glee as I surf an aqua blue breaking wave, to the soft peace that overwhelms me as I lay in a luscious green meadow, the earth never fails to amaze me. Bumblebees, beeches and birch trees. The natural world around you is a beautiful creation that supports humans and billions of other flora and fauna. But it is under threat from the climate crisis. The climate crisis is an ecological emergency caused by the devastating effects of humankind. Okay, to simplify, every time humans chop down trees, dig up land, create waste, and burn fossil fuels, the earth suffers. Most importantly, the earth is warming up because of the gases we create by doing this. The sunlight is trapped by these dangerous gases and the world heats up. And even a few degrees of worldwide warming will have devastating effects. All around the world, seas are rising, storms grow stronger, and fires burn further. But we hear that on the news and we see that on the TV about countries the other side of the world. What is happening where we live? Across the moor in Devon and Cornwall, there has been many forest fires because of the lack of rain and the hotter temperatures. Wildfires burn down acres of trees and moors, destroying natural habitats and killing animals, making the local animals and humans very ill. On the other hand, extremely wet weather floods towns across the southwest more and more every year. One town in Cornwall got the same amount of rain they were supposed to have in a whole month in one day. 2 billion litres of water rushed into the town, bursting rivers. Cars, walls, and even bridges were swept away to sea. And I'm sure everyone remembers Beast from the East. Another crazy effect of climate change was in 2018, when in February and March it snowed record-breaking amounts. In my town, it snowed so much, it even snowed on the beach. Imagine that, waves crashing onto snow, not sand. Because of all these freaky weather events that are only growing stronger and more common, as well as general weather patterns changing, many of our beloved and rare species are at the threat of extinction. Many dolphins around the southwest coast are heavily endangered. Seagulls, basking sharks, and even the extremely rare horrid ground weaver spider has nearly died out. It may not be pretty, but this incredible creature is only found in Plymouth, nowhere else in the world, and is soon to be extinct. The whole reason behind Moths to a Flame is to monitor and protect moths in the southwest because of their rapidly falling numbers. They may not be cuddly, but moths are essential to the ecosystems just as much as dolphins are. I don't want to scare you, but I hope you now understand the catastrophic effects of climate crisis on our home as well as the rest of the world. But what are we going to do about it? And what are you going to do about it? Because, as Matilda says, even if you're little, you can do a lot. Across the world, there are many scientists and politicians doing their bit to prevent the climate crisis, but there are equally as many not up to scratch. That is why we have the COP meetings, to keep all the politicians doing their bit in their countries. In our small corner of the world, there are many conservation projects like Moths to a Flame and National Trust, protecting beautiful Mother Nature. The Met Office, which is based in Exeter, try to monitor and predict these freaky weather events to prevent such disastrous effects. There are so many small things everyone can do, like eating less meat or using less plastic, or maybe growing more of your own food in your back garden or a local garden or at school. You could recycle more items, like making moths out of old milk bottles or other art projects made from your waste. Or if you want to make big change with the people in power, you and your class could write to your local MP, tell them how you feel and ask what are they doing about it. Maybe you could even do it another way. My school made a music video and petition, so be creative. I'm sure you've all heard of Greta Thunberg, who started protests to demand politicians in Sweden do more to stop the climate crisis. When she was only 15, she created the movement Fridays for Future. Primary, secondary, or even university students, including myself, take to the streets and protest one Friday a month with banners and megaphones to raise awareness of the climate crisis and ask everyone to do more to stop it. So you see, there is hope. We can prevent further fires and floods and snowstorms, even if it was fun to sledge through town. And we can protect the dolphins and the seagulls and the moths. And we can do this by creating a green future, you and me, because children are the future. The future of our planet will be so different from today to make the changes we need to make to stop the climate crisis. To do that, everything must change. Schools will be more heavily based around nature, with outside classrooms and natural science lessons. Jobs will change from careers that harm the environment to ones that enrich it. The way we travel and the way our food travels will focus on local materials and food, celebrating and protecting our local environment. We will once again take our place as part of the natural world, not the rulers of it. So imagine, be creative, the future is yours, and saving Mother Nature is up to you and me.
Thanks, Tess. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What do you think, seeing yourself do that? Do you think?
I don't necessarily like watching myself, but it was amazing how all the illustrations came together, and yeah.
Yeah, I know you did all the illustrations and so on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining in the project and producing that film. That was great, and your hope for the future about being part of nature as opposed to a ruler of it. Do you want to just explain that a bit more?
Yeah, I think it also kind of connects to at the end when I talk about, and hopefully try and get the kids to understand about a green future. I think when I talk to a lot of adults about systematic change in our world so that we can accommodate tackling the climate crisis, they get very nervous and they get very scared, and kind of a whole large change like that they can't really understand or imagine. But because children have such a amazing imagination, that when you present ideas to this, they completely accept them and kind of go with it, and that's so hopeful, because of course they will be the leaders and the change makers of tomorrow. And so kind of when I mean take our part in nature, I mean like re-establish the way our world works, essentially, to be much more aligned with nature so that we can sustainably and permanently stop the climate crisis.
Fantastic, thanks very much, and hopefully we will continue working together, Tess.
Yes, it would be great.
See you again in the future at one of these broadcasts or on our website. You've got a blog about COP at the moment, and there'll be others. Thank you then, and we're now whizzing over to South Wales to George to see his moths, see what he's found in his garden. Hello, George.
I think we might have a problem with the signal. Oh, is he coming?
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, George. We're nearly there. There we are.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. That's great.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Not particularly.
Good. I can. I was the signal was going a bit wobbly for a minute, but I hope it's okay now. Yes, I'm in my garden, and I'm fearful it's going to absolutely tip it down with rain in a minute, but I'm going to hold off just for a few seconds while I do the moths here. So I have to show you from my traps. So my moth traps here, all covered up from the rain, and luckily, I mean, it wasn't an amazing catch because it's cool for the time of year, and it should be about the peak moth season now, but the numbers are still well they would have been at this time last year. But that does mean that the moths are nice and quiet because it's cool. If it was bright sunshine now, they'd all be flapping about, which makes doing these things a lot more tricky. So there are some benefits, definitely. So I had about 30 species here last night, which sounds like quite a lot, and it would be good for a lot of the year, but for this time of year, that's quite well down on what I would normally expect. But it was coolish, and it rained a bit, and it was a bit breezy, so that's not too surprising. So we'll start with the elephant hawk moth, because we've not seen one yet today, and get to focus on that. Simon had a poplar hawk, and I just had this one hawk last night, which is the elephant hawk.
They're always,
really
they're always amazing, aren't they, George?
And so that will be.
Yeah. Oh yes.
They're lovely. Yeah, they're amazing, and I love the white on them as much as anything else. There's white legs and the white borders to the wings. They're just an amazing range of colours, and the caterpillars obviously are fantastic as well. So this in the garden will have possibly fed on something like a garden fuchsia, which they'll eat, but they will also feed on willow herbs. So we have little willow herbs, so weeds growing in a passageway of our house, and we do find the caterpillars on those occasionally. So I think if you leave your willow herbs that tend to grow in your flower beds, you sometimes will get elephant hawk moth caterpillars on those. It's definitely worth not weeding them out. So that's always great to see. I don't get huge numbers of them here. Down here we have, this is a bee moth, which is actually a micro moth, but quite a large one. And this is one that my kids call it a skewer moth. It's one of the ones that they've got one of their own name for because it's kind of pointed like a skewer at one end. But that's one that will actually live in bee nests and wasp nests as a larva, and it will feed on the kind of detritus and sometimes also on the bee grubs themselves, I think. But that seems to have got quite common. I get those in quite good numbers now. I also had a lucky moth, my first of the year. That might be one you're familiar with the caterpillars of, which make a web. You find them on fruit trees in the spring sometimes. It might be one Simon will get in his orchard on fruit trees. You also get them on hawthorns and blackthorns. And the moth is just coming out now. It's mainly a July species, really, just starting to emerge. That's quite a nice little moth. I only get small numbers of those here. And we have a peppered moth, which I've had lots of this year. It's had a really good year, unlike most other moths. So I had some really early ones, and they're still going. And I very occasionally get the black form, the melanic form, which was commoner around the Industrial Revolution time, and it's really become quite scarce now. When I first started moth trapping in Yorkshire in the early 90s, the black form was the commonest form of peppered moth there. But it's quite rare to see one now. I had one a couple of years ago, but they're nearly all the more typical spotty form. This one here, they're lovely kind of long-winged moths, and they have a really nice big caterpillar as well, which will feed on a whole load of garden shrubs and wild trees as well. They're not too fussy. And I have a shoulder-striped wainscot, which is another nice little moth down here. That's one I didn't used to catch in my garden, but it's now becoming a sort of an annual event to get those, just in small numbers. That's one of the grass-feeding species. Simon mentioned cocksfoot. This is one that will feed on things like cocksfoot as a caterpillar, so tusky grasses, It might not be breeding in my garden because our lawn's quite short because we've got pet rabbits that tend to keep it quite short. But it might be breeding somewhere nearby on some rough ground, on some cocksfoot or something like that. So that's quite a nice little moth. Lots of heart and darts as always. There's one down here, and we had, I think, 45 last night, something like that.
Oh, so you beat Chloe then, George?
I think so, sadly, yes. I think about a week ago I had 85 one night. It seems to get commoner every year. I didn't used to get those kind of numbers. I never see the caterpillars, but they must be feeding low down on sort of low plants, ground level. I think they're on the soil surface a lot of the time. You don't really see them. So yes, but it's obviously around in really big numbers. So the caterpillars must be here. And you see there's a load more on this box. There's 2 there, and there's another one there, one over here. Now they're kind of at their peak season around now this year. Last year they would have been going over by now, but they emerged a bit later this year. So a very common moth, but yeah, it's always nice to see them. And I also have a couple of snouts, which Simon mentioned earlier, a nettle feeder. You can see the snout on that one, which is the palps pointing forwards. And we do have some nettles in the passageway by the house. It might have come from those. It's certainly one thing if you let the nettles grow. You might not get the butterflies, the tortoiseshells and the peacocks necessarily moving in, because they don't tend to turn up that often on garden nettles. They do occasionally, but you're very likely to get something like snout moth caterpillars on them, and mother of pearl moth and spectacle moth. So even if you don't get the butterflies, there's a pretty good chance you'll get the moths that specialize on nettles breeding on them. And there's quite a lot of species of moth on nettle. So it's definitely worth, if you have room, letting a patch of nettles grow, even if it's in the shade. And we have some willow beauties. There's one over here, which is a little bit scruffy. They're becoming very common as well in the garden these days. And they are feeding on a whole load of trees and shrubs. We get them on our privet hedge out the front. They'll feed on plenty of garden shrubs as well as the wild species. So they're really not too fussy as caterpillars. But it's always nice to see those. Nice big moth. And I'll just try and show you one or two others if I've got time.
Yeah,
here we have
a minute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Here we have a bright line brown eye, not to be confused with brown line bright eye, which is, I don't know who named these things, but it's obviously designed to cause a bit of confusion. But the brown line bright eye I don't get in the garden, but the bright line brown eye it's quite a common garden moth. You see it's got the nice white line near the end of the wing, which is the bright line, and then the brown eye is the sort of spot above that. And it's got a nice sort of rich chocolatey brown colour, so quite a distinctive moth, as long as you get the name the right way around. And then I'll just show you a heart and club for comparison with the heart and dart. So I only get heart and club in smaller numbers, but the one here on the left of those two is the heart and club, which has similar markings, but it has a sort of, the head part is a bit whiter, and it doesn't have a distinct black line above its face, which the heart and dart does. And that's another one that's quite common, but not in such big numbers as heart and dart is. And that'll probably do for me. It's nice to see a few new ones for the year, and yeah, and always good to get an elephant horn moth.
Yeah, thank you very much, George. And what about the difference? I'm presuming really there's not much difference between a garden in Exeter and a garden in South Wales in terms of, you know, the moths in general, if they're similar gardens. We're not that far away, or do you think that the River Severn and the slightly further north would make that much more difference in the climate and the moth species?
There are some surprising differences between South Wales and Devon. It's probably more similar to Devon than it would be to, say, South East England, where things are a lot different in terms of the moths you get. But there are some species which are only in the southwest and don't make it this far north, even though we're only just across the water really, and it's not very far in a straight line. But some species are just that bit more southern, and you just don't tend to get them here so much.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting, because you know we're obviously we're thinking about climate change and how that has an impact on the species. And I know some species like it warmer and wetter, and some species don't, and generally things are maybe shifting a little bit further north, but maybe the River Severn is also a barrier to some.
It is probably a bit to some species, yeah, some of the ones that don't fly so strongly, but there are things like the Jersey tiger moth, which has become, I think, quite common in Devon now, where it's always had its stronghold. But that's spread up across Somerset and is now occurring over here on the coast as well. So that's one that has moved north and made it across the Channel and is colonising South Wales now. So that was definitely a climate change effect. It never used to occur here until the last 5 or 10 years. Yeah.
Well, yeah, good. Well, thank you very much for taking part in this Watch Moths. I hope you enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed having you along.
I did. It's great to see everyone's moths. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to see what everyone's catching.
Yeah,
and
good.
hear about all the projects as well. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much. And next, we're going to be going up to Cheltenham to see Jacqui and her white ermine moth and child. I don't know.
Hello.
Hello, Jacqui.
Morning. So yeah, we had about 30 moths in our trap, just over 30 moths, so not very big numbers compared to last year again, which is a bit worrying. But I had about 9 different macro moths and the rest micros, most of which I haven't identified yet. So I'll show you a few that we got.
What type of moth trap have you got there?
We've got, it's a Robinson trap. It's an eco one. It's 20-watt bulb.
Yeah.
So it's not really, really bright. But yeah, that's what we've used for tonight. So yeah, we've got a micro. Thank you. We've got dark arches, which I don't know if you can see on here.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Which might look a bit boring and brown, but when you put them against bark, they're just gone. You know, it's the camouflage is incredible. We got a very, very pale, elderly light emerald. I don't know if you can see in the bottom of this pot. Oh, wait a minute. Art and dark. Yeah, can we see in the bottom of there? Maybe it's a bit difficult to see. We also got a lovely coronet, which I was really pleased with because I haven't seen one in my garden before now. So I'll just try and get this one out on the end of a feather so you can see him. Oh, he might fly away. I probably can't see him. Give me a minute.
You could see it all right. It wasn't bad.
But the patterns are just so richly patterned. They're just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I was really pleased. See if he'll settle. There we go.
Oh yeah.
That focused. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the wrong way up. Sorry, classification. It's that way up, isn't it? Yeah. So that was really good. And Ben's showing us heart and dark. Got masses of those. And what else did we get? We've also
do your children always help you?
Yeah, they're very good actually. They really help me pot up, and we like looking at the through the book to try and work out what we found. So they're really helpful. And
was that one a magpie?
Where is it?
Where is it? I don't know where it is.
You don't know where it is. I think it's flown over to the window, love. There it is. It's over there. Yeah. We also got brown line. Wait a minute, let me get that right. Brown line, bright eye. Bright eye, brown line. Yeah, so they're showing you all the moths that we found. Yeah.
That's I think we didn't quite. But anyway.
There we go. There's another one. They're the dark arches.
Way right here.
It's right tucked in the pot, isn't it? Let's see if we can get that one out. There we go. So hold him on your hand. Hold him, give me your hand. No. There we go. Gentle. No, Wilson. No, gentle. Use a feather. There we go. No, I don't. I think he wants to stay in there, lovely. Just hold him like that. Just hold him in the pot. There we go. There we go. He's on you. Just leave him. That's it. Just leave him. That's it. There we go. Boy and a moth. So, that's it there. There we go.
Oh yeah.
Good boy. There we go. Okay.
Where does that one live in the garden?
I think it lives on our, we've got hazel, so I think it must be on that one, yeah. So, yeah, we do have some trees.
In Simon's garden, he's got some hazel, and it seems to me that hazel is a really good thing to have.
Yeah, I think that is a good one. And yeah, nettle as well. I have one nettle in my garden at the moment. I'm trying to cultivate it, hope it takes root.
I think it sounds like you need to go over to Wedmore and get theirs. Oh, look, there's some, they're quite lively, aren't they?
They are actually. I think we're waking them up. Sometimes they're quite docile, aren't they? But yeah. So yeah. But yeah, I think coronet was my favourite from our catch today. That was lovely to see.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And I'm glad your boys enjoy joining in with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. And now we're going over to John Walters back in Devon. So we've done this big circle around the southwest of Britain today. And hello, John.
Hi, Naomi.
Hiya. And
enjoy watching all the moths.
Yeah, we've had quite a good haul last night, despite the slightly wet, cool evening, haven't we?
Yes, yeah, it's warmed up a bit. I mean, things have been a bit slow or lower numbers this year, I've noticed. I think it's just because we had that cold weather in May. Yeah. If you get a good May, everything gets off to a good start. But as it was so cold and wet, everything was a bit subdued, and it's taken a while to get going, really.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, like we were talking about before, the populations of moths, overall, they've declined massively in the last 50 years. But as you go from year to year, there's just like little blips in the population.
Yeah, I mean, you can't it's difficult to tell year on year because it is down to the weather rather than the climate and it affects different things at different times of year. So the early flying things obviously have been affected. But since the end of May, it's been really quite nice, actually. So the later things should be good. But some things, I mean, I reared a whole load of emperor moths, and they just didn't actually hatch. They seem to know that the weather is wrong, and they're still in their pupae now, and they'll probably hatch next year. So put the cocoons back in the fridge. There's some moths like that which live out on the moor, and they're adapted to these sort of inclement weather. Some years seem to have this somehow. I don't know how they do it because I kept them indoors. They must be able to detect the air pressure and realize that the air pressure is low, so it's not worth hatching out. But they're a lot more clever than you think. And there are some moths which live up on the top of mountains in Scotland, and some of them stay as a pupa for like 5 or 6 years sometimes, I think.
Really?
So
really? I'm really surprised. It's something I remember you taught me last year. Really, I hadn't thought enough about how moths spend most of their lives as a caterpillar or a pupa, and that the moth bit is their decorative bit while they find a mate. In a sense, I mean, yeah. I know it varies from species to species, but I suppose in energy terms, when you think about the food plant for the caterpillar, that bit is almost the most important bit for the survival of the species.
Oh yeah, often like the puss moths I showed you last month, they're only around for a week or so, the actual moths. The emperor moths, or some of them, they just live for about 3 days, and they spend all the summer as a caterpillar, so that's the important part, really. And then all the winter as a pupa. But and of course there are moths which hibernate as adults, so they do live for months because they emerge in the autumn, then they're adults all over the winter. But most species are, they're moths for just a short time of their lives. It's just the winged dispersal stage of the creature's life.
Yeah. So I have been thinking about that in relation to humans and how they behave, but we won't go there now. What we can do is we can look at your film that you took.
I'll talk over this then.
And we'll see what you found yesterday morning at 4 a.m.
So the film will start in a minute, hopefully. I set the trap up at Brook Manor, which is a friend's place just up the road from me. So it's about a 5-minute cycle ride. I got up very early, as I said, because there's a wren nesting just up by that door there. So that gets in the trap, actually in the trap. So you've got to get there while it's still dark before the birds are up. There's a peach blossom moth just sat outside the trap there. That's marble white spot moth. There were a few of those. There are about 60 species altogether. There's a light spectacle and a clouded silver there. The spectacle moth's got little eyes on the front. We've seen those before. You always catch brimstone moths and a rivulet moth at the top there. The brimstone, you almost always catch it actually right through the summer. Lovely yellow moth, and the caterpillar is like a stick. I mean, you hardly ever see those things. There's this pale tussock moth, or the Ewok moth, as I think Jacqui said yesterday. That's it during the daytime. Some drawings of it, they just sit on a twig with a big fluffy leg, so they mould into the background. You're more likely to see the caterpillars actually, and people often find these late in the year. And they do actually glow in UV light. If you go out at night, late summer, you might see those. There's a little pyral moth, olivalis, quite a big micro moth, but one of the ones you're likely to see. A garden carpet moth. Again, a lot of these were actually sitting around the trap. Common marble carpet, again, sat outside. And then, so I spent quite a lot of time. There's a beautiful light emerald, and there were several of those. Often if you get there early in the morning, you see these things, but as soon as it gets light, these things will fly off. So it's a good idea. There's a mottled beauty, similar to the willow beauty, and there are several of those as well sitting around. And a silver Y, and there's been a lot of these come in over the last few days. I had about 6 on the valerian the other night, and also lacewings, which I didn't realise till a few years ago were migrants, and these come across from France and Spain, and they come over with the silver Ys. A large yellow moth, beautiful little thing, stunning little moth. And a little thing called Pinella. It's one of the grass moths. A lot of them are quite plain brown, but this is quite a stunning one with these silver spots on it. A female fox moth. This is one, the more likely again to see the caterpillars out on the moor or on the coast. And that's where the moth gets its name, from the big foxy caterpillar. And another one, the caterpillar is more distinctive, is the broom moth. It's quite a dull looking moth, but the caterpillars, you often see them on the moor in sort of August, September time, and they're quite stunning looking things. Poplar hawk moth, as we've been shown earlier, and that's the caterpillar of the poplar hawk moth. So look out for those on willows in a couple of months' time. The double line moth, which is a sort of a Dartmoor speciality. And finally, the giant privet hawk moth, and there are about 4 or 5 of these in the trap. And if you disturb them, they have these almost like a face on the back with little demon eyes looking at you with a big tiger striped pink hornet-like body. I'm not sure what they're trying to do, but they do look quite scary. So I suppose to a bird, that would frighten them off. So that was just a selection of about the 60 odd moths which I caught in the trap that night. So it was a decent night.
Yeah.
Moths, probably not as good as you would normally expect. I didn't catch any lobster moths. I don't know if anyone's caught any, because usually I catch about 15 or 20 lobster moths, but maybe they're a little bit late this year.
Has anyone else caught any lobsters?
I think Jacqui's put a finger up, yeah.
Yeah, I trapped in the Wye Valley about a week ago, and we had quite a few, maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, okay.
I had 5 in one trap there, so they seem to be out there in decent numbers.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll come out here. Usually it's a standard moth, one of the commonest ones at the site, but I haven't seen any yet. I always want to catch a female so I can rear some of the amazing caterpillars again, but they always seem to be males that I catch, or every single one.
Well, I thought that was
so if you catch a female, George, I wouldn't mind get some eggs off one and rearing the caterpillars. Barry Henwood gave me some caterpillars.
I've always wanted to get a female, but I like you just always
never turn. I wondered about running a trap right in the woods under a beech tree or wherever they're going to be breeding, and maybe the females just hang around there and don't fly around too much.
Yes, that's true. Yes, it's one of the caterpillar I'd most like to see, definitely.
Oh yeah, they're stunning caterpillars.
You see, when you get moth experts talking to each other, they're vying for their best catch and the nicest caterpillar. No, it's great, and what a wonderful range of moths, John. And we have had a question. Chloe was asking, and I thought the same. Is why would a caterpillar glow in UV light?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't think many people knew that really. I mean, I happened to go out I was looking for scorpions actually, because you get introduced scorpions in various places around Devon. So I brought a little UV torch and I went up around looking for them. I never found one, but I thought I'd have a look in the garden, and I found that a little crab spider glowed, those little ones you get on flowers. And also I noticed there was a pale tussock caterpillar, and that glowed. I didn't even realise it was in the garden. And this year I found out that hair streak butterfly caterpillars glow. So they're really quite hard to find. But if you go out looking for things like brown hair streak caterpillars, we can find the eggs in the winter. But if you look on blackthorns at night when they're feeding, they actually glow like a beacon. So it's actually a really good way to find them. So I don't know why they do it, but who knows? But it's interesting, another aspect of the moths and butterflies' lives, which we don't really know much about, but it'd be interesting to discover more.
Yeah, and I love the fact that there are always things to discover. I mean, I know people talk about astrophysics, and I know Tess in particular is really keen on that, and the space, looking out space, asking questions about the meaning of life and so on. But there's still so many questions to ask about everyday species that we live with.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure, yeah. I mean, all the years I've been looking at, about 50, I started when I was about 5, so I've been over 50 years now looking at moths and all sorts of wildlife. And really, you do discover, if you start looking at it, you do learn about life. I mean, just looking at, and a bit about the meaning of life, I suppose, in the end. Hopefully, by the time, you've lived your life and looked at all these things, you've developed a few ideas. Certainly, you've learned a lot about how life works on the planet. Not just by looking at moths, but by looking at the whole web of life, including ourselves, obviously, as major changes of the world we live in, and especially during my lifetime. I mean, we're talking about catching those few heart and darts there, or people think there's quite a few. But when I started moth trapping seriously in 1976, I'd regularly catch 200 or 300 heart and darts every night.
Wow!
And one night I caught 800, and that was just typical. And that was right at the end of before a lot of the pesticides and land use changes came in. And that was the end of the sort of moth snowstorm that used to occur. And people who are older and who, I know who lived in the younger in the 1930s, they couldn't put lights on at night in their house because their house would fill up with moths and bugs and all sorts. And it's hard to imagine, really. I just caught the very end of that. It's very hard to imagine what the countryside was like when there were just so many insects. And the insect, a lot of the species are still there, like the heart and darts. I look at them and think, there's a few there, there's 5 or 6 in the trap, but there were hundreds. So the actual biomass has gone down by like 90%, probably, something like that. It's no exaggeration to say that was in my lifetime, but if you go back further, it's actually enormous, the changes we've made. But still, these things are incredibly resilient, and that's why they still survive. And think, they really are. They really do cling on there.
And I'm going to just finish off with a little bit of hope in that when places are rewilded and left for that little resilient group that we have can grow massively again, can't it? It can.
Yeah. I mean, if we you see things like the net wildlands and other people who are doing similar rewilding. If you give nature a chance, it's all there. It's been pushed back, but if you give it a chance, it comes back. And particularly if you understand how it all works, and then help things as well by putting things back. I mean, really, we've just taken so much from nature. We really owe it a lot. We really need to give the world something back.
Oh, we're going to stop on that point. That's lovely. Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay.
And it's hopefully see everybody next month. And John, at some point I think it's the August one, we'll concentrate on a bit more on the art and have some of your more of your drawings and bring other artists in that are using their arts practice to express something about the moths and insect creatures around. So looking forward to that, but I'll hand back over to Jenny and we'll gradually close down. Jenny.
Mute myself again. So thank you again all for joining us this morning as part of the Moths to a Flame project. So if you haven't already, or if you have but you haven't recently, because we're constantly adding to it, please do check out the moths-to-a-flame.art website. Loads of information in there, loads of ways to join in. We've got things like I'm going to ask Chloe now to remind me the deadline for the poetry slam. If you're inspired to write some words about moths, about art, about energy, about the climate emergency, we'd love to have those as part of the poetry competition. Chloe, could you just remind me when the deadline is, please, for that?
July, Jenny. Jenny, can you hear me? It's the 2nd of July.
2nd of July, lovely. So 2nd of July, we've got this poetry slam coming up. On the events front, we've got all sorts. You're at Watch Moths at the moment, so that's about to disappear off the list. We've got all sorts coming up, including some solar artwork making sessions in the Plymouth area. We've got some Q&A sessions to do with getting involved if you know of a group, or if you yourself would like to get involved and you've got questions and you're not sure how best to approach it, either drop us an email or join us at those events. Generally, we get a few people along and it's really interesting to hear how the ideas evolve. We're not saying that we're definitely saying we don't know all the answers. So we love to hear how people are approaching the project and spreading the word. We've got the poetry slam, so there are tickets available for that for the 20th of July. We are also going to be adding very shortly an event for a live event a bit like this. So here in Plymouth, keep an eye on that. We might drop you an email once those tickets are available. Hopefully you can come and join us and see some real moths. And otherwise, just keep in touch and keep an eye on social media, on Facebook and so on, to see what we're up to. And we'll see you next month.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good
Cheers all.
month
Take care.
ahead. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Thank
cheerio.
you. Bye.
See you.
Thanks, John. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thanks. Bye.